In one form or another, we've all heard it said before. What about all the wars and suffering caused by religion? Doesn't it simply prove that religion is wrong and the world would be a much better place without it? But in part one, we saw how German physicians played a leading role in the murder of millions of people during the Nazi era. Yet no one would argue that we'd all be better off without medicine or hospitals. In this episode, we're going to explore the crimes against humanity committed by another non-religious group of the 20th century, the scale of whose crimes might have even have made a Nazi physician sick to his stomach. Believing he had made one of the world's greatest discoveries, in 1848 the atheist Karl Marx published his findings in the Communist Manifesto. Within its pages, Marx claimed to know the causes of humanity's problems and their remedies. He argued that the evil and injustices of this world didn't ultimately stem from within a flawed human nature, as advocated by Christianity, but rather by unjust social and economic structures outside of ourselves. So, if a society could completely rearrange itself, according to what Marx proposed, replacing unjust economic structures with ones which promoted equality and social justice, then humanity would be able to create their own heaven on earth without need for God. Yet instead of creating heaven, his ideas brought hell, causing more deaths and human suffering than any religion throughout the entire history of the human race, giving rise to some of the most bloodthirsty tyrants of all time, all of whom being avowed atheists. Now, while it's probably true that Marx envisioned this radical transformation of humanity naturally occurring more from the bottom up, those who tried to implement his ideas in Russia and elsewhere after his death believed it would only come from the top down. As Lenin would famously call it, the dictatorship of the proletariat. For to atheists such as Lenin and others, the only chance for Marxism to ever succeed would be if society was completely taken over and all forms of opposition crushed. Now, if this seems self-contradictory and a rather odd way to bring about a just society, to people like Lenin, the end justified the means. If it took tyranny to liberate humanity, then so be it. As one sign read at a Russian labor camp, "With an iron fist, we will lead humanity to happiness." The great delusion was no matter how many millions were killed trying to attain it, the Marxist paradise was always just around the next bend in the road. The leaders of these regimes convincing themselves if they just stayed the course, it would lead to a world of peace and social justice. It's estimated that over 100 million people lost their lives because of this mad pursuit for a non-existent never-never land. Make no mistake, Marxism was to its core an atheistic movement, with religion being its greatest enemy. So it's really no surprise then that for Lenin, one main characteristic that he admired about the man who would become his future successor was a man's intense hatred for religion. The man's name was Joseph Stalin. Oddly enough, as a younger man, Stalin had dedicated his life to God by becoming a seminary student training for the priesthood. Yet after losing his faith, he then dedicated the rest of his life to destroying the name of God. Standing at only around 5'5", Stalin quickly became the most feared man in Russia. He would stop at nothing to create a godless heaven on earth, even if it meant murdering millions of his own people. For example, after having continuously resisted their farms from being turned into vast collectives, Stalin ordered hundreds of thousands of poor farmers shot. But they would be the lucky ones. He ordered their grain stocks seized, causing deliberate mass starvation. Precise numbers are hard to come by, but it's estimated that anywhere between 6 to 10 million people starved to death. To put that into perspective, 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. When a local official was asked about it, he confessed, "We know millions are dying. That's unfortunate, but the glorious future of the Soviet Union will justify it." You see, the end really did justify any means. Killing millions of poor peasants was worth every single drop of blood if it brought the collective whole into a world of peace on earth, goodwill towards men. And oh yes, Marxists in general didn't view homosexuality very favorably, largely considering it a vice of the wealthy. In fact, Stalin made it a criminal offense, punishable with up to 5 years of hard labor. And his treatment of homosexuals certainly wasn't unique, with homosexuality being punishable in various degrees throughout the communist world. certainly ranking atheists as some of the worst in the treatment of gays.
And we've only just scratched the surface concerning the crimes against humanity committed by atheists in the 20th century. So, do these crimes prove that atheism is wrong and the world would be a much better place without it? Absolutely not. Many atheists, at least those in the West, clearly condemn what Stalin and others did in the name of atheism. And if Karl Marx had been alive to witness it all, he too would have been one of them. The actions of Stalin, though prominent, certainly are not representative of all of atheism.
Yet why isn't the same distinction made when it comes to religion, especially since there's so many variations of it? In our post-9/11 era, why do all religions get condemned by the barbaric actions of certain jihadists? So even though the argument that religion is invalidated by its abuses is extremely popular and can be heard even from university lecterns, it is in fact a very sophomoric one. Next month, I'm going to be taking you on a very personal journey of mine, how after attending Bible college and being in the ministry, I became an atheist because of the issue of human suffering, but how that exact same issue brought me back to faith in God. Keep searching.
I can't remember what I was going to say. You better not crap on me.